This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. The first government shutdown in almost 7 years is underway, and so too is the blame game on Capitol Hill. Republicans and Democrats continue to point the finger as the fiscal impasse enters its first full day. Senate Majority Leader John Thune.
The only real victim here is the American people. This is so unnecessary.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries blames the GOP for not showing more urgency.
House Democrats are on duty. House Republicans are on vacation. Shame on them.
But House Speaker Mike Johnson says Democrats' demands are unreasonable.
Real people are going to be hurt. What's the way out? There is no way out.
President Trump says there are worse things, however, than a government shutdown.
A lot of good can come down from shutdowns. We can get rid of a lot of things that we didn't want, and they'd be Democrat things.
Correspondent Kate Lee Huey Burns on how the shutdown affects you.
In a shutdown, national parks and museums will have to close. Social Security and Veterans Services could be delayed. TSA agents and air traffic controllers will continue to work, but without pay. And a shutdown could have an impact on the economy, too. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that roughly 750,000 federal employees could be furloughed.
The last government shutdown happened during President Trump's first term and lasted 35 days. The search continues in the central Philippines to find survivors from a powerful earthquake. That magnitude 6.9 quake collapsed homes and businesses in Cebu province. Most of the victims are from Bogo, a small town on one of the largest islands. The Philippines is home to more than 7,600 islands. In Southeast Asia, the death toll is nearly 70. A bomb squad detonated a suspicious device last night at Utah State University, just hours before a Turning Point USA event. Speakers eulogized the group's founder, Charlie Kirk, who was murdered 3 weeks ago today during a rally at Utah Valley University. Conservative podcaster Alex Clark spoke to the crowd last night.
Evil thought that it could silence him, but evil forgot something. Martyrs don't disappear, they multiply.
Utah Governor Spencer Cox told attendees the assassination of the conservative influencer back on September 10th was not just an attack on Charlie Kirk. It was an attack on free speech. Now to Texas, where a second detainee has died after a shooter opened fire last week on a Dallas ICE facility. The victim leaves behind 4 young children and a wife who is pregnant with their 5th child. The sniper was targeting ICE agents. He committed suicide. President Trump has landed a deal with drug maker Pfizer. It's aimed at lowering the cost you pay for prescription drugs.
This is a promise that President Trump has been making, and now, as the White House likes to say, promise made, promise kept. Because yes, President Trump, along with the Pfizer CEO, made the big announcement that the pharma giant is going to offer their drugs here in the U.S. at the lowest prices, putting them in line with what people pay in other countries. Medicaid patients will get lower prices offered on a new website called TrumpRx.gov.
Madison Allworth with Fox Business. Harvard University has just agreed to pay $500 million to settle allegations of anti-Semitism on campus. The Ivy League school is also accused of discriminating through controversial DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Harvard will use that money in the settlement to launch new trade schools. No more fat troops. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is bringing back fitness standards for the military. CBS's Charlie D'Agata.
He encouraged daily PT from the Joint Chiefs of Staff on down. Everybody has to get fit.
It's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon.
There's going to be a highest male standard for combat forces in terms of physical fitness, combat field tests, and physical fitness tests.
Hegseth announcing the new fitness standards in a speech yesterday to 800 military generals in Quantico, Virginia. A new kind of COVID is making the rounds in several states, including New York. The so-called Stratus variant can cause brain fog, nausea, chest tightness, and scratchy throat. The New York Yankees will try to bounce back in their wild card series tonight after being beaten last night by the Boston Red Sox in the Bronx. Here's Scott Pringle.
Tough one for the Yankees, falling 3-1 to Boston. They couldn't get a run in the ninth inning after having bases loaded with no outs. Anthony Volpe, the only offense for the Pinstripes, with a solo homer. Manager Aaron Boone confident the Yankees can come back.
Tonight was a great baseball game that, we just couldn't get that final punch in. So we'll be ready to go, and I expect us to come out and get one tomorrow.
Game 2 of the best-of-3 series is tonight in the Bronx.
We'll have more on baseball's postseason later on in the broadcast with Randy Snavely. Also ahead on today's Noon Report, digital literacy in Pennsylvania. Who's really to blame for the government shutdown? And SU mourns a hoops legend.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. October has started with classic autumn weather. Bright skies, crisp, cool air. Where do we go from here? Forecast details are up in 10.
All right, we'll see you then. Thank you, Kevin. It's a double whammy in Pennsylvania. The Commonwealth is reeling from the ill effects of a government shutdown and the lack of a state budget. The shutdown took effect at midnight. The state budget was due 3 months ago. Pennsylvania Congressman Glenn Thompson thinks Democrats bear most of the blame for the fiscal impasse.
They feel like if they shut the government down, they're going to stick it to President Donald Trump. And it's the American people that are going to suffer.
The Republican representative telling Family Life News.
They have, unfortunately, such a disrespect and even a hate for our president, President Trump. They're willing to make the American people suffer needlessly.
It is worth noting that Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman was one of just 3 Democrats to support the GOP bill last night in the Senate regarding the late state budget. Congressman Thompson says, well, that stems from a lack of leadership in Harrisburg.
Governor Shapiro has shown no ability to bring everybody to the table to work out their differences and work in a compromising way.
Pennsylvania is one of just 2 states, Michigan the other, that is operating without a state budget right now. Western New York Democratic Congressman Tim Kennedy says Republicans are to blame for the first government shutdown in nearly 7 years.
Trump and congressional Republicans refuse to do their job and continue to gut health care in America. Republicans control the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. They own this shutdown.
Southern Tier Republican Congressman Nick Langworthy.
The last 3 shutdowns cost nearly $4 billion. That's just a waste. This is just all for purely political purposes.
The last government shutdown in 2019 was the longest in history, lasting 35 days. A 14-year-old child has admitted to a horrific crime in Cambria County, Pennsylvania. Judah Courtney says he murdered 2 women inside a home in Carrolltown Monday night. One of the victims was the suspect's own mother. Prosecutors plan to charge this child as an adult. Neighbors say they're shocked.
Yeah, for this kind of small town, it's kind of weird. This doesn't normally happen here.
In a small town like this, it is very heartbreaking. It's scary thinking that this kind of thing could happen in such a small area.
Police say they've never had a problem before at the home where this grisly crime occurred. The family is originally from Texas and moved to Cambria County 2 years ago. A 3-year-old child from Urbana, New York, in Steuben County is safe today after disappearing for several hours yesterday in the woods near the family home. home. Police say the child went missing while searching for a lost puppy. More than a dozen first responders assisted in the search. The child and the puppy were found safe and sound in the town of Bath by the former mayor of Savona, Tom Drake. Way to go, Tom. The Pennsylvania Education Department has created a new online toolkit to help people separate fact from fiction when it comes to navigating the information superhighway. Education Secretary Carrie Rowe.
This isn't just about students avoiding bad information on social media. It's about students learning to think critically and to ask good questions and to become responsible consumers and creators of information.
Governor Shapiro's concerned too many are playing fast and loose with the truth on the World Wide Web. He says the online toolkit is a necessary fix with social media such an integral part of our daily lives now.
How we consume information, how we check whether that information is real or not. The amount of misinformation and disinformation that exists online
is, in a word, says the governor, staggering. He says young people need to fact check everything.
I don't care if your point of view is on the political left or political right. I don't care if you agree with me or disagree with me. I want you to form opinions. I want you to form those opinions based on fact.
The governor says he's not yet ready to restrict access to social media during the school day, as New York has done. Shapiro says he prefers local control on the issue of smartphone policy. Plans are in the works for a new solar park in western New York. The Renewable Energy Project is bringing solar power to a portion of the former Bethlehem Steel site in Lackawanna. That site was damaged by a massive fire that burned for days nearly 9 years ago. Construction on the $6 million project began in August, should wrap up in the spring of next year. The solar farm will include 4,300 solar panels laid out across 10 acres of land. A local theater in western New York is paying tribute to a Hollywood legend.
The Amherst Theater in the city of Buffalo has announced a series of movies starring the late Robert Redford. The Hollywood legend passed away last month. The Robert Redford movie series will run from October 6th to October 9th and is set to feature 4 films across the 4 nights. The series kicks off with The Sting, followed by the famous film The Natural, filmed in Buffalo, then All the President's Men, and the series wraps up on October 9th with A River Runs Through It. Tickets are available at DibsonTheaters.com. Dee Haley, Family Life News.
Thank you, Dee. The all-time leading scorer in Syracuse University men's basketball history has died. Lawrence Moten, arguably one of the greatest ever to put on an SU uniform, was found unresponsive in his home in Washington, D.C. yesterday. This SU student says Moten meant a lot to the Syracuse community.
We have such a historic basketball program, such a historic, Orange legacy and network of graduates of Syracuse. And it's kind of crazy to think that, one day he was, not that long ago really, when you think about the grand scheme of things, he was a student just like me and just like all my friends here. So it's sad to think about, losing somebody in that community.
Lawrence Moten played at SU from 1991 to 1995, amassing more than 2,300 points during his career. His jersey number was retired in 2018. Moten leaves behind a wife and 2 daughters. Lawrence Moten was 53 years old. A new proposal from one Western Pennsylvania school district could shake things up for high school football in that part of PA. That story from Family Life's Brian Query.
Mike O'Brien, a high school athletic director east of Pittsburgh, has proposed a major change to how the Western Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic League forms its football conferences. Instead of dividing schools strictly by enrollment, his plan would consider roster size, past performance, and program stability. Teams would be grouped into 7 divisions under the proposal with a weighted point system used for playoff seeding. O'Brien says the goal is to create more competitive balance and reduce injuries, especially for struggling programs that have faced lopsided losses. The WPIAL says it will review the proposal, though similar plans have failed to gain support in the past. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. Sports is next. It's the 2-minute drill right here on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, Major League Baseball's playoffs began yesterday, and the home teams in the American League did not fare very well. They did in the National League. Let's begin in the Bronx, where the Yankees got a very good outing from Max Fried, but Boston got a great outing from Garrett Crochet. He struck out 11 Yankees over 7+ innings, and Boston grabbed a 1-0 lead in this best-of-3 series with a 3-1 victory. Anthony Volpe hit a home run for New York's lone run. Tell you, the Yankees had their chances, particularly in the 9th inning. They loaded the bases with nobody out against their former closer, Aroldis Chapman, but Chapman then got a strikeout, a pop-up, and a strikeout. Game over. In Cleveland, the Tigers won a tense 2-1 game over the Guardians. Tarek Skubal tied a postseason record with 14 strikeouts. He nearly gave up 1 run in nearly 8 innings of work, so it's Detroit up 1-0 heading into today's second game of their series. Over in the National League, the Cubs took care of business with a 3-1 win over the Padres. Seiya Suzuki and Carson Kelly hit back-to-back home runs in the 5th inning to take the lead, and Chicago's bullpen did not allow a base runner for the rest of the game. In Los Angeles, Shohei Ohtani and Teoscar Hernandez combined to hit 4 home runs, and they drove in 7 of the Dodgers' 10 runs as L.A. ran away from the Reds 10-5. Tommy Edman also went deep for the Dodgers. Blake Snell fanned 9 over 7 innings of 2-run ball. One football note, the season has not started well for the 1-3 Baltimore Ravens. Well, now it's gotten even worse. Quarterback Lamar Jackson going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks with a hamstring injury he suffered in Sunday's loss to the Chiefs. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, thank you. Coming up on the Noon Report, it's day 1 of the government shutdown, earthquake in the Philippines, and the upside to downsizing at church. Martha Maniquez Foster explains on Inside Out after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Recently, musician Tiffany Arbuckle Lee announced in a social media post that she has deconstructed at least part of her faith. Lee is the latest in a growing list of Christian celebrities to deconstruct various aspects of their Christian faith, including Kevin Max of DC Talk, Derek Webb of Caveman's Call, and Joshua Harris, author of I Kiss Dating Goodbye. Now, Lee's doubts about the Bible could have been corrected in a decent Sunday morning youth group class. Questioning the reliability of the Bible, Lee said that she never knew that Jesus and Paul never hung out, or that the apostle was reporting events that had happened decades before he wrote. Of course, neither of those facts are a secret. While it's theoretically possible a very young Paul could have met Jesus, there's no record of that in the Bible or church history. But we do know that Jesus met Paul on the road to Damascus, not long after the resurrection, and that Paul met with Peter and James, both of whom had spent years with Jesus, and that Paul was present with all the leaders of the church at the Council of Jerusalem. In other words, even if the idea of God's Spirit guiding Paul is dismissed as irrelevant, Paul was closely connected with many people who knew Jesus Christ well. Lee also claimed that the Bible was written by mostly white dudes. However, the only books of the Bible written by a Westerner at all are Luke and Acts, because they were written by the physician Luke. White people barely show up in the scripture, in fact, and are often the villains. Maybe the Philistines of the Old Testament could have come from the Aegean Sea region and the Romans from Italy. But the vast majority of the Bible's authors and cultural context came from what's known as the Middle East. Lee's also troubled that Moses did not witness what he wrote about in the Torah, which is only partly true. He is, after all, a primary character within the events described in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Only Genesis records events before his life, and it's remarkable just how accurate his account is. Kenneth Kitchen argued in his classic work on the reliability of the Old Testament that the numerous details of the Bible's description of ancient life point to a deep knowledge of the times. And of course, if witnessing the actual events is a requirement of trust, we should dismiss every modern work of history, and we should also embrace the Gospels. And that's even if we don't accept the first premise that an all-powerful God who created everything wanted to give us a reliable historical account. It is a shame when a Christian is convinced that some very answerable claim about Christianity is unanswerable simply because they've never been exposed either to the questions or the answers that are out there. Look, the call for the church to go deeper has been clear for quite some time now. I'm certainly encouraged by the dozens of churches that now offer Colson Fellows training as cohorts, and those churches that have gotten serious about challenging their young people to ask hard questions about faith and the world. Look, the truth is big enough for these questions. That's because the truth itself is rooted in the very person of the one who created the world. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you much. Outside we go. Weatherman Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life forecast for this afternoon. Bright sun, blue skies, noticeably cooler than recent days and a touch breezy. High in the 60s, clear, chilly tonight, and there'll be some areas of fog and a little frost in some spots late at night. Low temperatures ranging from around 50 near Lake Erie and Lake Ontario into the 30s in the normally colder rural valleys of the Twin Tiers in central New York. Mostly sunny and crisp. Tomorrow, high in the 60s to near 70. Friday, sunny and warmer, high in the low to mid 70s.
All right, Kevin, thank you. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Bob Price, and here's what's happening Wednesday, the first day of October. 750,000 federal workers are being furloughed as the first government shutdown in nearly 7 years enters its first full day. Reporter Michael Wallace tells us how the shutdown impacts you.
The TSA is warning of travel delays. Its agents are still working, but without pay. National parks remain partially open, but sites that require staffing, like Smithsonian museums and the Washington Monument, are closed. Food banks should be okay for now. Brian Green is president of the Houston Food Bank.
But if it starts to get to the point later in November when the benefits are also not coming in, where people are not receiving SNAP, etc., it will be overwhelming.
Social Security and Medicare payments will still be made. The mail will still be delivered.
So who's to blame for the fiscal impasse? On Capitol Hill, the blame game is underway.
Republicans are plunging America into a shutdown.
It's a very reckless decision that Chuck Schumer has made.
Republicans want a short-term funding fix that will keep Uncle Sam in business through mid-November. Democrats are demanding an extension of the Obamacare tax credits as part of the deal. The search continues in the central Philippines to find any more survivors from a powerful earthquake today. That magnitude 6.9 quake collapsed homes and businesses in Cebu province. Most of the victims are in the tiny town of Bogo. The Philippines is home to more than 7,600 islands. In Southeast Asia, the death toll is nearly 70. The Trump administration has reached a deal with drug maker Pfizer. NBC's Christine Roman.
So it lowers prices on some popular medications for people who use Medicaid on the Medicaid program, right? So we're talking about a White House deal with one company in one program, but lowering prices really important here because we know the prices for drugs are something that really are bothersome for consumers.
The White House has launched a direct-to-consumer website called Trump RX, where Medicaid recipients can purchase those prescription drugs at a lower cost. Abortion rates are on the decline for the first time since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade 3 years ago. According to the Guttmacher Institute, a pro-choice group, there were 5% fewer in-clinic abortions in the first half of this year compared to the first half of last year. 2/3 of all abortions in this country are the result of do-it-yourself medications, like mifepristone, which is under scrutiny for causing adverse side effects in women. 1/10 of all women who take mifepristone have had to be hospitalized. Turning Point USA held its first event in Utah last night since its founder, Charlie Kirk, was assassinated on a college campus in Utah 3 weeks ago today. These attendees noticed extra security for that rally last night at Utah State University.
A few weeks ago, as we can see, there wasn't as much security, and just walking up to the venue, drones flying around, everything, it made the atmosphere feel more surreal almost.
Definitely feels different. It's a little more heavy, but I'm not just going to hide. I'm not going to stand back and not
I still got to put my voice out there. I'm still going to go out, show my beliefs.
Kirk was shot September 10th while delivering remarks at an outdoor event at Utah Valley University. President Trump raising some eyebrows in a speech yesterday to 800 military generals in Quantico, Virginia. He suggested that crime-ridden, Democrat-led cities like Chicago could be used as a training ground for troops. Defense Secretary Hegseth and Attorney General Bondi are in Memphis today, which will soon see a troop presence. National Guard troops have also been called in to help crack down on crime in cities like L.A. and D.C. The Screen Actors Guild is responding to the introduction of the world's first AI actress. Her name is Tilly Norwood, and she's described as Hollywood's first ever non-human actress.
Let's get to know each other, and thanks for watching.
The Actors Union says the Norwood character was trained on the work of professional performers without permission or compensation. Tilly Norwood's creator hopes to launch more than 40 AI stars in the near future. You're listening to The Noon Report, a midweek edition on Family Life.
Nothing is strong enough to defeat God's church. Jesus said so, but he also entrusted the church to fallible humans. We've found it necessary over the centuries to periodically clean house, getting rid of cultural and other kinds of clutter. I'm Martha Manikas Foster, and this is Family Life's Inside Out, where we look at ways that God transforms believers from the inside out. Today, my guest is author Michelle Van Loon, who believes it's time for the church to get rid of the things that get in the way of living this vibrant faith as Jesus intends. She calls it downsizing, which is also the title of her newest book, Downsizing, Letting Go of Evangelicalism's Non-Essentials. So, Michelle, one of the first things I want to say in talking about downsizing is that I'm afraid that the word might be easy to confuse with the phrase deconstruction, Christian deconstruction. Deconstruction is a scary word because many of our friends have never reconstructed. They just walked away from Jesus. So, Michelle, what are you talking about when you talk about downsizing the church?
There's a big difference in what I'm talking about versus what most people think of, which is that they're just taking apart all of the pieces of their faith and their church experience and seeing if there's anything left after they dismantle. When I talk about downsizing, it is for all of those, the burned and the burned out, both people that are still in church settings and people that are hovering near the doors and people that are now on the outside who may be actually deconstructing their church experience, not necessarily their faith. My book is an invitation to people to consider and to reconsider what really matters. And surprise, spoiler alert, it's usually a really short list.
So if we're going to box up and get rid of the non-essentials, what are some guidelines that separate what is essential from what the church in many ways has sanctified from our impulses or absorbed from the culture and then made a part of how we do church?
Imagine that you are in a country where it might cost you your life to be associated with being a believer in Jesus, being a follower of Jesus. So you gather in secret, you sneak in secret. That experience kind of distills what's worth living for, what's worth dying for, and I guarantee that a lot of programs, the color of the carpeting in your church sanctuary, the politics of who's in and who's out and who's making decisions in a congregation, a lot of that stuff really falls by the wayside when you are forced to think, what is it that I need in community and as a person to continue to live for Christ? But we are pretty bloated in American evangelicalism. I don't think I'm saying anything that would surprise anybody. And so we've made a lot of it more essential, more worth dying for, more worth dividing over, and more worth sometimes wounding innocent people in order to win in terms of power or authority in a denomination or an organization or a ministry.
So, Michelle, the things that have attached themselves onto the way we do church, you've alluded to it. They can harm us in a lot of ways. They can distract us from God's actual call on His people, and it can go all the way to preventing us from seeing the image of God in ourselves and the people God places in our lives. Are there questions you think we can ask ourselves that can help us distinguish between what's core to the life and work of the body of Christ and what's gotten added on that has no foundation and likely no place in the church?
At one point, when we were between churches, we actually spent a good chunk of time as a family memorizing the Apostles' Creed. We needed a place to begin with our kids to focus on the things that we knew were really, really important. Not the creed itself, but the pieces that were in there about who Jesus was and who we are as a result of who Jesus was and is. The essence of what it means to believe and who you believe in is a very, very powerful place to start.
Amen. That is Christian author Michelle Van Loon on this week's edition of Inside Out, talking to our own Martha Meneikis Foster about the upside of downsizing when it comes to the Christian church. You can subscribe, listen to, and share all our Inside Out podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Well, beautiful autumn weather upon us on this 1st of October. High pressure in southeastern Canada, providing a feed of cool, crisp, dry air. And dry is the weather watchword again for the rest of this week and through the weekend. Our area desperately needing rain. For the next chance of showers, we'll await the arrival of next Tuesday and Wednesday. In the meantime, for this afternoon, bright sun, blue skies, noticeably cooler than recent days and a touch breezy, high in the 60s. Clear, chilly tonight, and there'll be some areas of fog and a little frost in some spots late at night. Low temperatures ranging from around 50 near Lake Erie and Lake Ontario into the 30s in the normally colder rural valleys of the Twin Tiers in central New York. Mostly sunny and crisp tomorrow, high in the 60s to near 70. Friday, sunny and warmer, the high in the low to mid 70s.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. And finally at noon, 32 Chunk is the name of the bear, a 1,200-pound brown bear, recently named the winner of this year's Fat Bear Contest at Katmai National Park in Alaska. This annual competition allows viewers to follow a dozen bears on live webcams as they fatten up for the winter hibernation. Chunk won this year despite having a broken jaw, which he suffered while getting into a fight with another bear. Voting was done in a bracket-style tournament over the course of a week. More than 1.5 million viewers took part in this year's Fat Bear Contest. And that's our world, the world we live in. Wednesday, the first day of October. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.